This is Diana Sullivan in Austin, Texas, and I'm going to do a garter bar video now about how to make eyelets. Now, eyelet, of course, is a hole. It's a lace technique, and this machine, which is a bulky machine, does not have a lace carriage available. Sometimes you want to do lace. You can do this technique, however, on a standard machine as well. All you need is a garter bar. Now, the reason that they don't have a lace carriage available for this bulky machine is that these needles are big and not very flexible, and the lace carriage depends on a little bit of sideways movement in the needles that these needles really don't have. Now, the first step is to decide where you want the eyelets to be, and in this case, I want the eyelets to be on every other needle, and I just hold the knitting back with one hand and bring out the needles that I want to be the eyelets. Now, these are the needles that I would select if I happen to be doing a picot hem and I needed every other needle to be moved and to have a hole for the turn of the picot hem. This is also a very common layout for a lot of lace patterns. For instance, the trellis stitch that I showed in the sample early on in this series included this exact needle layout to get the trellis. Now, the next thing that you do is not exactly what you would expect, so let me go slowly, and I am going to zoom in very close to the needles. Okay, that was as close as I could get to the needles and still focus. For the next step, what I'm going to do is bring the needles in the back forward a little bit, just so that their latches open. Now, these are the stitches that are not going to be removed onto the garter bar. The beauty of this technique is that you can rapidly transfer only the stitches you want to transfer. So I hold the knitting back against the gate peg so that it doesn't move, and I just bring the stitches out a little bit. What that did was it opened all of the latches, and it brought them to what we would usually call upper working position, where they're out a little bit of the way, but they're not all the way forward. And I did that with the needles that were not going to be an eyelet. Now, think about this. The needle that's going to be an eyelet is going to have the stitch behind the latch, because the latches are way up here. The stitches that are not going to be an eyelet still have them, they're still positioned inside the needle's hook, and they're still inside the latch. Now, the next step is to push the needles that were selected at the beginning back so that they are right alongside the ones I just pulled out. So let me get that. And I often do it back here. Now the needles are all in a row, so they can go on the garter bar. So I just take the garter bar and I just hook it on all of these hooks. Now, if I had any latches that were open, I could first run along with my credit card and make sure that all my latches are open. Now, I pull this out. Now, the machine is flat, so these stitches are coming right out with the needles. So I pull it on out, and then I can put in my stopper. And the stopper holds everything still. It braces the needles so they don't move or go anywhere. Now I can just grab these needles and pop them right onto the garter bar. What has occurred here now, look closely. When I popped all the stitches onto the garter bar, what occurred was that the stitches that went on the garter bar were the ones that I wanted to move. So look, this stitch is on the garter bar. This stitch is still on the needle. It's still inside the latch and still behind the hook. Garter bar, hook, garter bar, hook. So I very, very rapidly got all of the stitches that I wanted to move onto the garter bar and none of the stitches that I didn't want to move. And I just pick these up, go over by a stitch, and I've got a couple of open latches, so I'll just fix that. That's my credit card. And I just moved all of them over at once, and then all I have to do, of course, is pop them back onto the needles. And I have now transferred an entire row of stitches, every other needle, very, very quickly using the garter bar. Now I want to do that one more time, and I'm going to zoom out a little so that you can see the whole process a little better instead of being so very close into the needles. All right, off comes my stopper. I did 2 rows. And I'm going to select these needles again. So I just hold the knitting back and I just pop all the needles that I want to select out to the hold position. Then I take my needle pusher and I bring the ones I didn't select out just so they open. And I try to get them in a nice straight row. And I often do this with the garter bar edge because it's long. And then I push back these so they match. See, they're all in a row now. And push back these. The reason you push back those is so you can get the garter bar on. Then I get the garter bar and I put it on all the hooks, pull out the needles, and of course the knitting comes out with it. Put the stopper in position, pop my stitches onto my hooks, give it the little slide to open latches. Now last time I transferred everybody to the needle on the left. This time I transfer the whole crowd to the needle on the right, lift up, and pop my knitting on. You would just do whatever your pattern says to do. But this is great because you can get all the way across the row at once. And let me knit a few rows. I want to show a variation on this.